Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Edges podcast. I'm your host, Brian Peters. Truly incredible conversation today. Got Mike Adams on the podcast, former Ohio State Buckeye. Got drafted in the second round to the Steelers, and then now he is a yoga instructor, mental skills instructor, just an incredible life liver out of Tampa Bay. But we have a great conversation. We talk about his football career, the injuries he battled, the mental resistance that he battled as well. Amazing story. I think everybody in sports should hear it, as well as his transition and his ability to absorb yoga and apply it to not only his playing career, but obviously his life after football now, the structure he found, the power and mental skills that lie in that. And then we actually close out the podcast with the application for football in particular, but athleticism, like what it does for range of motion, mobility, stability, and the end ranges of sports performance. And that's a really fun conversation. But we also go down the rabbit holes of spirituality. We get into a lot of self-awareness conversations, and then that goes into breath work. He also dabbles in the breathwork world as well, which is fun. And he actually has had some mental imaging done while performing breathwork, which is a cool conversation. But really, really, really deep and powerful conversation. One of my favorite humans to talk to now. But please enjoy. Mike, thanks for joining me, man.
Bro, I appreciate you having me, brother.
Dude, I'm excited to talk to you. We obviously linked when we were in town for Zach's wedding, but and got talking down all the rabbit holes. But right now, how we lead this off, usually a question, the podcast is called Chasing Edges. So like, where right now in your life are you chasing edges? Where are you learning, curious, growing, that kind of thing?
Oh, man. So an edge I'm always trying to chase is just being a sponge. You know what I mean? Always learning. So as a teacher right now is a place where I'm really learning. I'm doing. Preparing to get set up for my 300-hour teacher training. In the yoga teacher world, you kind of go from like maybe a 100-hour, 200-hour, 300, 500. And then at that point, you're like a expert yoga therapist type of deal, and you can teach other people all that kind of stuff. But just always pushing edges and ways that I can teach better, ways that I can practice better. Physically right now, I'm a big hand balance guy. So physically right now, I was just in the gym working on some handstand stuff, lowering down from a handstand and like a push-up type deal to some different arm balances. So some tricky transitions and things like that. And then spiritually, where can I get better? Since moving to Florida, I joined a church, I've been pretty consistent. And now I want to take that next step and join a group, and, really implement myself in the community that way too. So all the edges, bro.
Yeah. Mind, body, and soul, they're all moving. And that's a big body balance into what are you tipping the scales? And then you got to be 6'7", hey?
Yeah, like 6'8", like 260, 255, 260.
All right. Hell yeah.
Big tight end.
Yeah, big tight end. But obviously retired tackle as well. When do you find the yoga and start getting into it?
Retired tackle. So yeah, lifetime ago. I was playing in Pittsburgh, by way of the Ohio State University,
Shout out the Bucks, yeah.
Shout out the Bucks, baby. But yeah, I was playing in Pittsburgh. Had a really good first year there. It was a second round pick. Won Rookie of the Year for the team. And then in the off season, kind of had a little crazy experience, got stabbed in the stomach at gunpoint in an attempted carjacking. And, which like had to get my stomach cut all the way open because my colon got cut in half.
Oh shit.
So I was like a quarter centimeter or 15, 20 minutes from, clocking out. And, it was a wild experience. And like, you get into talking near-death experience and like what that feels like, and like being in the back of the ambulance and like starting to feel nice and warm and like fading out and like really comfortable though and at peace. And then the guy being like, wake up, keep talking to me, man, keep talking to me. Hey brother, and I went from that to when I first got in the ambulance trying to call my mom and all that stuff, and then calling my mom from the operating table when the doctor's like prepping for surgery, this guy's about to die. My first instinct was, I got to call my mom. Called her. I'm like, hey, I'm at this hospital. It's 3 a.m. Can you get down here? I love you. Bye. Woke up and then spent 10 days in the hospital. Got out from that, and I was just wrecked physically. And it was a month before camp. But, we all have that Superman complex as athletes and football players in general, where I wanted to push, and just make it back because I had a great first year. So I push and I rush back and not ready. I couldn't even hang from a pull-up bar without feeling like my stomach was going to rip open, But I'm out here as a starting left tackle, on Sundays. So that lasted about 4 weeks, and I get benched. I couldn't play. Take some time to train and stuff, and just heal up a little bit. And in that time, I had a teammate, Fernando Velasco, who was a center, and him and his wife were going to their first yoga class at Amazing Yoga in Pittsburgh, which is where I ended up training. And they invited me, and I went. It was a hot power class with this woman named Hannah Pickering, who was an amazing teacher, but she is a badass, right? And she absolutely killed me. I lasted 20 minutes, and then I just laid there like, please don't let me die,
Yeah. Hard Shavasana, yeah.
Oh, dude, hard Shavasana with a lot of prayer. And but like I could feel that it was really good for me. So that off season, I spent my off seasons in Columbus, and I had a homegirl from high school who got certified, and she started teaching at Harbor Yoga in Dublin. So I started going there 4 times a week that off season. Got down from like 350. I was like 358 at my biggest, but that whole season I was really big. I was weak, so I wanted to be heavy. To try to be able to sit down. But so I got down to like 305, 300, and was like jacked. Like I had the top four in the basket and a little bit of love on the bottom. And when I got back that off season, I was working out with my shirt off and stuff. And Coach Tomlin and Todd Haley are like, dude, Big Mike. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, let's go.
So I had a really great, really good third year, coming off the bench, and then ended up starting half the year. Played really well, got a couple game balls, some games where Big Ben threw like 500 yards, 6 touchdowns, no sacks, some really awesome Pittsburgh games. And I really owed all of that to yoga. And it started to heal me physically, mentally. And, it was at a time where I was in the NFL drug program. So like cannabis was not a thing. I had PTSD terribly, couldn't sleep, and it was like I was drinking to sleep, like for my whole second year. And, the addition to yoga in my life. And then once I got out of the program, being able to like use cannabis and be able to actually sleep for more than 10 minutes at a time without the same night terror, dude, my world took off.
Quick break for a shout out to our partner, The Breath Belt. You can find them at The Breath Belt on Instagram or thebreathbelt.com online. And there you can purchase a breath belt. It's a diaphragmatic trainer, great for turning on and activating the psoas, the abs, the QL, the low back, all the above. It's a great breathing tool to learn how to cue yourself into becoming a 360 breather, which is one of the hardest things, but that's how you want to create and generate both respiratory strength and the ability to align and stabilize the spine. It's a great tool to use while you're driving, in preparation for workouts, all the above. It's endorsed by some of the biggest dogs in the industry, the RPR system, Sorenex, Rogue Fitness, Kabuki Strength. It's a tool that you can use at any time. I love it. I use it with my athletes, but they've given us this awesome code, EDGES20, EDGES, all caps 20, and you can get 20% off the product, which is massive. So hopefully you check them out, thebreathbelt.com, THEBREATHBELT.com. Check them out, plug in the code, and enjoy. Dude, that's bananas. The whole getting stabbed story is a whole, probably a podcast in and of itself, just because it's like, well, I've read some like different book, like most of them are like Door to Heaven, like spiritual books, where like I think one of the books, like this is a long time ago, back when I was kind of on my own spiritual journey, but where like they they both like one guy's like a brain surgeon. I can't remember what the title of the book is. And he comes into this near death experience, and they both describe like the warm, eventually like your dimensions dissolve, but you can feel like these deep senses of like emotions and all these kind of things. And I think that's crazy that you got to experience it and live and tell the story and let it wake you up. But like the flip side of that is like the trauma of it. And I'm just learning about trauma now too, which is crazy.
Dude, so the whole trauma side of it. And so I have a background of like psychedelic experience, like totally by trial and error, like as a kid, just like as a older teenager in college, eating mushrooms for the first time. And then like over the years, being able to like intentionally, like use plant medicine and discover things and heal things. And the thing that I'll say about like near-death experience and the physical sensation of like the heat and like the calmness is it was very similar to my experiences with NMDMT and like smoking that. And when it like you get this sensation that comes from the top of your head down your body, and it was very similar to that. And I had experienced that before I got stabbed. So it was like really trippy for me coming out of that experience to draw that connection. But then like, yeah, like with the whole trauma side of like post near death and getting stabbed and like the whole thing with like public court case and all that kind of stuff. It was so real. And at that time, mental health in the NFL was like
non-existent.
And like, so like my whole thought process is like, man, I got to heal up fast, get back and prove my worth. And if I have to go to therapy, they're going to think I'm crazy and they're going to cut me. You know what I mean? So through the whole process, I didn't go to therapy. You talk about getting low, brother. Like I was so low. I had a big bridge. I lived up in the slopes in Pittsburgh, which is like Southside Slopes is like living on a mountain. And the road I lived on is Mission Street. It's like this, literally. Like you got about 3 inches on both sides of your car where there's stairs or a house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like you're driving up it. And so I had this huge bridge at the top of my street, Mission Street Bridge. And like when I couldn't sleep, when I was just like losing it, when I was just like, I don't know if this is worth it anymore, bro. Like I had three nights where I went up to the bridge, sitting on the edge, just kicking my feet. Like, man, this is where I jump head first. Like I can't fucking take this anymore. And I had 3 things that I would always think about that would continually bring me back, and one was my mom. Another one was a couple of coaches that I had, which is, to me, was so wild. And another one was just my family in general and God, and like, I didn't have the strongest spiritual foundation in my faith at that time. But it was there. There's like an expression in Black culture called having a praying grandma, and talk about there's nothing more powerful than having a praying grandmother. You know what I'm saying? Like as Black young men, like in the hood and stuff, like all the things that are coming at you, they talk about old Black women in the church and how they're always praying for their kids and their grandkids. And it's like a thing, like when you're out there in the jungle and you don't know it, but the only thing that's keeping you safe is that praying grandma on her knees in her living room at church, middle of the day, praying for you. And those were the kind of things that I thought about, like when I was at rock bottom, when I was thinking about just letting it all go. And you would think that that was the lowest of lows, but then I came back from that and I came back so strong. And then 18 months later, going into my contract year, I'm in the best shape of my life, playing the best ball, wearing OTAs, and I blow my back out. L5S1, massive herniation, gets stuck on my sciatic, developed drop foot, like a week and a half before camp. You know what I mean? And I'm a second round tackle, so I'm looking like big money.
Yeah.
I started half the year before, and was like definitely the stronger guy. And the dude in front of me ends up tearing his ACL. So it's like my job, my payday. I'm mentally ready, and I blow my back out. And, I go in one day, they're like, hold your foot up, and my foot just drops. And they're like, oh, you got back surgery tomorrow morning. I'm like, damn, 10 days before camp, like,
Yeah.
And so we try to rush the rehab process a little bit too fast, and I didn't. It was against my will. It was just like shit was just getting thrown at me, and I was in a really vulnerable spot, young guy, and I developed scar tissue on my spinal cord. Can't have another surgery to clean it, or I might lose my legs. So they're like, maybe it'll dissolve, maybe not. It dissolves. I end up being able to heal up, like starting to heal up, and relations with the Steelers were like so terrible. I didn't trust them at all. They kept trying to sneak me the, like if you sign away your injury protection rights, they can cut you and not pay you.
Yeah,
so
the injury waivers, yeah.
Yeah, bro, they tried to sneak that into me during Bible study one day. Like literally during Bible study, and I lost it, went ape shit. Pastor Chad Johnson's holding me praying. The whole team's like yelling at the trainer, like, get out. It was wild, bro. And so I have a meeting with Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin, and like, trust isn't there. And like, do you think it's best we split? Yes. A week later, I get released.
How they slide that into Bible study?
Bro, we're Bible studying in the locker room Friday morning, and I'm just there. And the trainer, like, we're in a circle, Bible study with a sheet of paper. I'm with like Kelvin Beachum next to me, I think.
Yeah, stud guy, yeah.
Yeah, and trainer walks in, and he just was like, "Hey, Big Mike, can you sign this real quick?"
Fuck out of here, yeah.
And I'm like, "That's literally what I was like."
Yeah.
And just like lost it. But so that was the whole thing, and like, my relationship with the training staff obviously went downhill fast, and like,
Well, the process of like being in rehab's a vulnerable state, and you're speaking to all these Superman complexes, because I've been there with ankles and hamstrings and shoulders and all that kind of stuff too, and you're trusting in their expertise and the content of their character and their heart. Like, I care about this guy, and they say that, and then they do things like that compromise it, or they're not. Yeah,
there's that, and the whole thing with me at that time was I had a second opinion doctor, a specialist, like a spinal specialist, who gave us very, very strict instructions on what to do and what not to do, right? And all the stuff that they would try to tell me to do was what not to do. So I would be like, I'm not doing this. And we would have literal fights. I'd be like, the dude literally says right here not to do this, And so it got to be a point where it was just this back and forth. And I'm just like, man, like, the expression team doctor, team comes first. It was just like, what is going on? And like the doctor who did my surgery, Joe Maroon, was the doctor in the concussion movie who said football doesn't cause concussions.
Yeah.
Which blows my mind, but he's a great dude. Awesome man. I think that time period and all that like did a lot for him in here. But when I had my back surgery, James Harrison had a very similar experience, right? With the Russ rehab, and like had to get another surgery, and Joe was his doctor. So I'm up there, and like Joe's seeing me, and he's like, and James is like a big brother to me at this point. Like we would work out together, something like he's a great dude. And so James is like, bro, don't do that shit. What they're telling you to do, you know what you need to do. Don't do that shit, bro. And Dr. Maroon would be like, listen to James. Like he would see me in my little checkup, and before he would leave, he'd be like, listen to James. And I'm like, bro, this is like crazy, And so when we finally split, I just was like so happy to just be free. So I went home, and I actually got linked up with John Kolb, who is a Steelers Hall of Famer. He was Terry Bradshaw's left tackle.
Yep.
Dude is like one of the most amazing humans. So when I met him, he was like in his mid 70s. and he's a physical therapist, but he also works with people with spinal cord injuries and neurological injuries. So like stroke victims and stuff, teach them how to walk again. Incredible work. I'm at Planet Fitness on a treadmill, and one of his colleagues sees me and was like, John Kolb heard you were here and he would love to work with you and like try to get you back. And I was like, say no more. I'll be there tomorrow morning. So I go up there. Me and John start training every day, 5:30. We're walking on treadmill incline walks because it's all I could do at first. He's just reading the Bible for an hour straight to me. We're just reading the Bible, bro. And we start training and we're getting after it. And like, I'm getting strong. I'm going to work out with John at 6, going to yoga right after, going to eat and all that, hitting the Pilates class, and then training with John again. That's what I get into, right, for, months. And then on the weekends, me and him are going and speaking about our faith in these men groups and this thing called Legends of the Huddle throughout Pittsburgh. So it's like, he's like really elevating me in like so many areas and just rebuilding all my confidence and all, like it was amazing, like I'll forever be indebted to him. And so I get healthy enough to go play. I go play for Chicago, go out for a workout. I go out for a workout against another tackle, like during camp. Bro, I'm out there like a prime stud, like I'm 295, shredded, and this dude's gassed, and I'm out here just killing everything. I didn't even put my practice cleats on. They're like, just go see the GM. Sign right there.
You're good,
like, yeah, it was dope. Like, so got to go, and my time in Chicago was like all the bad experience that I had professionally with Pittsburgh. Like we were shit as a team in Chicago, but it like really rewrote a lot of those traumatic experiences I had. And it was so bad that like I start a game week 11 or something versus the Giants, and I partially tear a bicep and a labrum, but our other tackle's already out with a concussion. So they're like, well, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to totally tear it and you're just going to have surgery. And, but is there any way you can like maybe play this week? You don't have to practice. I'm like, yeah, I'll try it. We go
Superman.
Yeah. This is like the day after the game, and so you know how sore you are that day. So we go out for a walkthrough, and I'm just in PAT walkthrough, bro. I take the 1-2 step as a tight end, and I got to stand up. My back blows out again.
No fucking way.
Oh, bro, I was like, no. And I had signed an injury waiver saying like, if I hurt my back, that they didn't have to pay me. We still got a 6-game stretch. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we had a bye week coming. So I knew we had the long week off. I just had to get home after this walkthrough. So I go home and I'm like, fuck, man, I'm just going to let it rest all weekend, see if it the flare up settles down. I'll take a bunch of anti-inflammatories. I had like a bunch of tramadol. I'm just down in tramadol on my fucking couch crying, can't move. I had a roommate, one of my buddies from home, lived with me to like take care of my dogs and stuff while we were there. And I'm like, bro, get my guns out of the house. I'm feeling in a real weird place again, got real low, got real sketchy, started getting real, like all the weird traumatic stuff with like professionally and like not wanting to tell the trainers. And I'm like, I'm never going to play again. So I want to like get these last few checks,
Yeah.
And, bro, like 2 days go by and I call my agent. I'm like, dude, I blew my back out and walked through and like, I'm dying. He's like, dude, get in the training room now. So I go and I tell the trainers like exactly where I'm at mentally. And they're like, bro, we'll take care of you.
Hell yeah.
Bro, they paid me for the rest of the year, kept me there and rehabbed me. I would go in every day. They'd like, I'd hot tub. They'd put me on the table, acupuncture, stem, all the good stuff, like really work on me. And, bro, it was dope. Like at the end of the year when I went home, like I felt really good about like walking away, all that stuff. I felt really good about like the way that I was handled as an athlete, organizationally. And to be honest, going into that season, I was coming off a year where I didn't play for a year and I was just hunting big deer on my farm in Ohio and doing a bunch of yoga and working out,
Yeah.
And I like loved it. I shot like my first buck was like a 11 point with a drop tine, like 130 something, like a trophy first buck by any means, right? And I get into land management, all that stuff. And so when I went to go play in Chicago, dude, there would be deer on the practice field in the morning. You could watch from the training room. I'd be talking to I had a trail cam out there, me and Josh sitting, and we'd be talking to the trainer, showing them the bucks out there and stuff. And I'm like, dude, I love football and everything, but I think like whenever this season is over, I'm ready to like call it and go live that next phase. And so it was dope. Like I went home and I was totally cool, just like I had 8 epidurals for my back to try to numb it over the last couple, like year and a half. Not one ever worked. I had a family friend, RIP, Dr. Ashraf or Zach. He gave me 1 epidural, bro. And as soon as he did it, I was pain free. I got off that table, went to my house, got a yoga mat, went to the yoga studio. I did 60 days straight. Right. And I got like my food. That's when I got my food all in order and all that. And I was like, I had to lose this weight. I'm never going to feel like that again. And that 60 days, built really strong habits for me. And it was at that point, like mentally, I started to just really get clear. I was out in the woods a lot, doing all that stuff. And I just, started living a life of a little more intention, and I decided to go to yoga teacher training. My same friend who got me into practicing was like, yo, what about teaching? And I was like, all right. And so started doing that, and life really took crazy turns. You know what I mean? Like next thing you know, I'm like in Mexico for a yoga teacher training trip. That's technically a work trip, tax write-off. And I'm on a beach with my journal, listening to the waves crash. Like, don't get no better than this,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wild.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Like you did a lot of things just intuitively well from what I've learned talking to guys about transitioning stuff. Because like obviously, one, it sounded like you found some closure and like the treatment and understanding your body and all those things, like great. And then it's like, but you jumped right into like a new structure, and like some guys can't handle no structure. Myself included. It took me a while to transition. And then you're in nature, like again, there's basically like, if you look at yourself as an animal anyways, like we're intuitively taught how to sympathetically respond to threats and stimulus and those kind of things. But we're so far removed from nature. Like nature itself is actually supposed to be our down regulator. Like we're supposed to walk around. We're supposed to function with the sun. We're supposed to understand light and dark. We're supposed to eat natural foods. And like nature is actually our down regulator. And then now, which people just get it fucked up. But like, so you're outside, you have structure, you're doing hard things. Like obviously like yoga is hard in any way, shape and form. Like my experience with yoga is that it's hard, even if it's just that controlling your breath with a movement, or it's like, obviously like you're reaching end range of motion in some way, shape or form for yourself. So like that is like that own little self battle with like, how far can I go? Can I breathe farther into it? Can I go outside of my limitations? So I think the power of yoga is slept on too, because I wanted to talk and reverse back to this after the transition talk, but like as far as yoga, like a lot of guys look at it as like, oh, it's mobility training or it's a like recovery modality, but it like you used it like for real as training. And then you obviously coach it in that realm too. And I think like and it's some of it's getting into the mainstream with like the knees over toes guy. And then I've talked like the podcast before that's going to be released before you is Justin Kavanaugh. And we talk about it for a hot second, but like people have just like villainized static stretching, like pre-workout and those kind of things. And he trains some of the fastest humans in the world, like Johan Blake, Rogers from the United States. So he trains these guys and they all static stretch before they run. And he makes the case for it. I can't articulate it very well, but like, I just think like the sports science and all those things kind of like turn us off to some things that are actually intuitively fantastic for us. But yeah,
bro, the sports science behind it, like, so I've had some pretty in-depth studies with my breath practice and all of that, and my brain waves and all that.
Oh, sweet.
But so what I'll say about first with the yoga and like how people initially perceive it is a lot of people get into it for like the workout and like the physicality,
Yeah.
And what you'll find is that when you do it consistently long enough, you then get introduced to the mental aspect. And so the way I teach a lot of hot power yoga, which is like where I kind of got started. And when I teach hot power classes, I like to push people to their edges, but I like to make it clear to them that you're going to get to a point where you're really hot and you're really tired and you're really annoyed and frustrated. And that's when it's going to be important to notice your thoughts and think about your mind like the sky, clouds in the sky, right? No matter how hard you try to stop that cloud, it's going to keep going, right?
Yeah.
Even if you can touch it, it's just going to go through and you got to treat your thoughts like that and try not to attach and just let them go and be like, oh, that's an interesting thought. That's fucked up. That's weird. That's cool. That's awesome. I love that, and just notice what they are and just let them go. And then while you're in that and you like notice those feelings of frustration, just notice them and where they come from and which ones are repetitive, and then try to get back to your breath. So those big breaths in, bottom of the lungs, long breaths out to try to slow and calm. But I think in that space, as you know from breath work, when you're exhausted like that, it brings your trauma to the forefront. So it's a really good opportunity to get to deal with your trauma. And that's how I used it therapeutically. But then when you get into the sports science, bro, so I went to this place in California in Oxnard called Pure Sports Recovery. And they do like a variety of stuff, but it's like all for pro athletes. And they do everything from like substance abuse stuff to like head trauma stuff. And so I was able to go out there and have my brain like hooked up to one of those big things with all the wires and measures all. You had a post on your story the other day of the color coded scale of different. So I got that for a month straight, hooked up to my head, and in the room there'd be like a breath follower on the screen, and in the room when you were in your parasympathetic, it would be like, oh, like, and then when you were out of it, it would like storms crashing, right? And it would flip back and forth like immediately. So it was kind of crazy. And there was like 10 other guys there also doing this, and I was the only one with a breathwork practice. And so for me, we went a little more in depth, and they're like, so what do you do for parasympathetic? So I started with just a 4-4-4-4 box, and just like, and they were just seeing how long I could stay in the parasympathetic, and I could stay in for like 15 minutes at a time, like from my baseline practice, and they're like, what? And so basically the studies were the effects of all this stuff on depression and anxiety, because I've been diagnosed like major depressive disorder, like all of that stuff, anxiety, all that. But through my yoga and my breathwork practice and movement, I'm able to regulate myself to the point where this neurologist is like, dude, so you mean to tell me like you're able to do things through your day, and like you don't just like, you're not just a hermit like all the time? I'm like, well, that happened, I have to combat that every day. You know what I mean? But through these practices, when I feel that, I have tools to when I wake up and I notice like, oh shit, this is going to be a rough day if I don't do this right now. So I just, drop to my knees. I pray first, I meditate, and I breathe, and like move and get my spinal fluid moving, because my main source of physical pain comes from my back, So I move in the morning and get my spine moving. And then from there, my brain wakes up and all that. And that's how I start the day. But yeah, man, like having the opportunity to learn all that stuff about my own brain individually, and to have like color coded scales like you posted of my own brain, dude, it's just like giving me so much more understanding about like just my mind body connection and like brain fog and things like that, and like things I can work on to combat that. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's he's referring to a post from the HHP Foundation. They're a great follow on Instagram. I believe Brian McKenzie is the owner of it, who's another monster in the breathwork world. But yeah, like I think the coolest thing about that, and like what helps your understanding is like you got to see your brain, and it tangibilizes like that there's stuff happening in the brain that we don't know, like where it's like we're throwing darts in the dark trying to fix our brain because we can't see it. We don't know where the blood's going. But you found out this tangible thing that the breath work helps, that you understand the power of the parasympathetic nervous system, the ability to down regulate and control, but then like also like your movement practice, your meditation practice, like the science on meditation, like obviously it comes in all shapes and forms, but like it like shrinks the amygdala, activates blood flow in great areas of the brain for problem solving, deep thinking, like all these things. But like we so like if you have like pimples on your face, like you're going to take care of your skin. If you're like your muscles are shrinking, you're going to get back in the gym.
Yeah, you can see them. They're tangible. Yeah. Physically tangible.
Yeah. And I think if people start thinking about like, cause like I've been on this kick where I like Dr. Aman. He does a lot of stuff in the brain trauma world and mental skills and mental health and that kind of thing. He doesn't even like mental health. He prefers to call it brain health as opposed to that. So nice. Like food, diet, thought patterns, meditation, breathing, like anything, like even like the way you deal with trauma. Cause again, like you said it too, like when you start breathing fast and like you're basically in a static state in yoga too. So I see it when I put people in the ice up to the neck, and I know you practice all that stuff too, but like your memories, like your hippocampus is right next to your limbic system. So like this wind chime of the lungs and the heart rate that happen like right before and right after you get in the ice and all these things, they can stimulate. And you see it in breath work too, where like you do the Wim Hof or you do faster sympathetic breathing. People will start crying, like emotions come up.
Somatic release. Like crazy.
Yeah. Wow. And people just don't realize that like the physiology, the respiration and the heart, that they're like, they're a language, and like they're speaking to your brainstem and to your deep brain that like, okay, like this is a traumatic breathing pattern. So maybe the last time I breathed like this, like it was a domestic violence, or like I had lost a family member, whatever your trauma was. And that's why these emotions come out. Like you're just this language of physiology, and like that's why controlling your physiology gives you a chance at controlling your psychology. But I like when that stuff happens. One, because like I think everybody needs to feel more emotions. Like we need to stop like masking ourselves. But two, like when you get in the ice, like, and like when you experience this drench of emotion, it becomes tangible that all this stress, or like the language of stress that you're speaking to your brain, like is important. So like now, but then your second time in the ice, you controlled yourself. There's no tears. Okay. What's the difference? Your breath was slower, or like your eyesight was open, whatever it ends up being. I think that stuff's magic and people kind of sleep on it, but I love that you, like I would love to do that myself, just because like that's just more fuel for my fire to know like what's happening in my brain.
Bro, it was so cool. And we did some other things too. Like have you ever heard of TMS?
Like it's like the transcendental meditation stuff, or no? It's not TM.
So it's basically it's for head trauma therapy stuff, and it's basically magnets. And yeah. So you like, they locate like the spots on your brain that like so that CAP measures all the waves of your brain, where you're too fast, where you're too slow, like all versus standard deviation. And so like for me as an offensive lineman, like we're a lot of head-to-head contact. So a lot of our spots are here versus like a DB who is hitting the ground like this when they're falling. A lot of theirs might be over here, and stuff like that. So for me, it was like I would go into TMS and they would put this big ass magnet like in this machine here, and it like pulses and it changes the waves of your brain to go to the speed where they're supposed to be rather than where they're at. And you do it for not very long, but it doesn't really feel like much, but it's pretty calming, and you just kind of notice your overall onset change over time. Dude, it was incredible. Like, yeah, it was really wild. There was one time when I was, we were doing some type of therapy, and I started having a panic attack. And I went in this dark room and did TMS, and it completely chilled me out. Like, And it was like clockwork. I was in there just doing breath work and TMS, and it just, in a dark room, it just calmed me right down, bro. It was like incredible.
Yeah,
But,
I love that just because it's a tool. Like, and then like, and you're in your feel, like people need to learn how to feel all these little changes in their state and that kind of thing. But so I actually was talking to a couple guys I have had on the podcast. Dr. Strano is a regular, but and then Dr. Ken Kanakin does all this TMS stuff. And then he does magnets to like open up range of motion and stuff like that
nice,
too,
yeah.
which is crazy. And there's like these little square magnets, but then they do some of these magnets on the head. And so again, like obviously some of it's trauma, some of it, like it can be caffeine addiction, nicotine, like all these things that stop blood flow to certain areas. But I think it was Coach Cav was saying that like putting a particular magnet in the area of his brain, like opened up his range of motion on his back or his hip flexor or something. So like it just like your brain can like stunt your body mobility too, and then you can just open it up. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy how your brain can stunt all your mobility? That thing is a tricky thing.
Yeah.
There's a guy who you would love. His name's Dr. Nick Castellano. He's from New York. He's a astrophysicist, neurochemist, and he has like a multi-million-dollar oil field patent that he has. So he's like a very wealthy doctor, but he's also a pastor.
Oh, hell yeah.
And so he's a part of this thing called Warrior 13 Ministries. It's a retreat I went on, but he has translated the Bible fully from front to back in Hebrew and Greek, and like Old Testament to New Testament English. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, like wild. Like he's done this. He has it all written. It's all he has it all color coded and all the different languages and like what all different piece of each word means. Like I'm talking like all the way in, right?
Wicked smart. Yeah.
Yeah. Wicked smart. And he goes deep into a lot of that stuff, man. Just like, oh, bro, I don't know. It's just like, there's so much to like the connection of your physiology and the connection of your brain to your heart and how your brain limits you and like what fear does, you know, like the way I like to explain it to people is, you know, your brain's job is to make you feel safe, right?
Yep.
Make you feel like everything's okay. So as a little kid, the first time that you get like, say you're really excited, like me and my dad are going to go to fucking Cedar Point and it's going to be so fun. And like, I can't wait. I'm busting at the seams to go. And then, oh man, dad's got to go to work. Something happened and he's got to go put out a fire, you know, and you don't get to go. But like 10-year-old you're heartbroken, like heartbroken. You're in your room, probably crying. Like, man, dad doesn't want to go to Cedar Point with me. He said he was so excited. Now, you know, so like you experience that heartbreak. So the next time that you go to get excited about something like that, your brain tells you like, oh, but last time it hurt so bad when it didn't work out. So like, let's try to minimize it. And that's why you see people minimize like, oh, I want to do this, but I don't care really that much if it doesn't work out, you know?
Yeah.
And like things like that. It's their brain trying to make them feel comfort. There's an incredible Mike Tomlin saying that he just talked about on the Pivot podcast. And it's about like, he'd always say like, don't seek comfort. It's like, we are never seeking comfort. And he talked about like coming home from losing a home game at Heinz Field and his mom being in his house and be like, man, the refs were so terrible today, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, Mom, get out of here with all that. Like, I can't have that. Like, I can't take time to feel bad for myself. You know what I mean? And let that, because that's just going to make me like be a shell of the man that I am. And it's going to make me take time away from doing what I really need to do and diving into solutions. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just, it's such a weird thing, the way the brain is and how the tricks that it plays.
No, I mean, I've gone down like a people pleasing psychology route too recently too. And like, it's funny how much of this stems from this like protection mindset. It's like, it's literally primal. Cause like, in essence, like we had to survive, like our survival was dictated by our parents. So like, obviously our needs come second. So when they're mad or if they're physical or they're stressed and anxious, like our goal is not to be a problem or not to be complicated. So we please them. And then we don't grow out of that. And we start treating other relationships like that relationship where we need to please other people in order to like either be non-confrontational or again, just to keep the peace. And so people, or to get affirmation, whatever it ends up being. And people don't realize that like, as we're adults, like we're no longer as kids, we don't have the communication ability to say like, oh, I was heartbroken. I'm in pain. I have trauma. Like, no, my priority number one is make sure you're okay, mom and dad, because my survival dictates that. And then so now we have to understand as adults that like, okay, we have the communication skills. Like we can not be reserved. We can be our authentic self and speak our truth. And again, like that, if anything, that helps the team as opposed to like creating resentments or not solving a problem because we want to keep this vulnerable person we care about happy or whatever it ends up being. It goes deep and deep. But then like, if you understand, like I can call somebody wrong without calling them an idiot. Like I can, again, like I have these communication abilities now to where like, I don't need to take this pre-existing structure of survival into like the workplace or a new personal relationship and things like that. And I think that's really cool. And then like the cool thing there where it's like because like in essence, like Tomlin didn't want to be lied to by his mom. Like, and like we, in essence, we need to prioritize not lying to ourselves because people pleasing is lying to yourself. And then, so if you're, again, the more true you can get to like what's actually happening, what you really want, like life gets a little easier, but it's cool to see people tie that to psychology. And then I really like the humans, like your guy, you said, Nick Castellano, like the people that can bridge like spirituality into astrophysics or whatever, everything he does is just like mind blowing.
Dude, it's incredible. He talks like one of the really incredible things that he talks about is, like he talks about the heart, and there's scriptures about like, in Christianity about like God inscribing, your truest desires or his truest desires on your heart. Right. And so when you talk about the heart, a lot of people don't realize your heart has memory cells, the same memory cells as your brain. Your heart has like a whole bunch of those on it, and it holds memories, and it holds those memories in there, and you feel them, and you like, and a lot of them are like your truest, like most heartfelt. That's where that expression comes from, heartfelt memories. And that's why when you get into things like heart transplants, if you talk to a guy like C.T. Fletcher, he had his heart transplant, and he talked about after he had his heart transplant, he kept hearing this little Asian woman. He could feel her. He could smell her. She was in him, and like he could literally feel her. And it's because those memories are on the heart. There's another really cool instance of a woman, middle-aged white woman, really like upper middle class, probably kind of bougie, woman who got a heart transplant. And after she got her heart transplant, on Sundays for like, it was like for a year straight, she would go to this bar and she would buy a pack of this certain kind of cigarettes, and she would smoke a couple cigarettes and drink beer and watch football at a bar. And she couldn't understand why. She never smoked. She didn't drink beer, and like she didn't really like football. And it was the memories on her heart, like that she felt drove her to do it. And it's so crazy. Yeah, if you look up memory cells on your heart, it'll talk all about it. It's wild. But a lot of people don't like, but he draws that connection to scripture and all this stuff. But like he draws every connection that you could think of in your mind and your body and your heart and your physiology, even in your neurons and your cells and cell plasticity and elasticity. And like, he will connect that to the Bible. And it's like some of the most incredible stuff that I've ever seen. Like, if you're not Christian, if you don't believe in God, if you're anything, you will listen to this man talk, and your wheels will at the very least be doing burnouts.
Yeah. But it's pushing your limitations. Like that's like, if you want to grow spiritually, whether it's God, Allah, nature, whatever your energy is, like, yeah, like push those limits of your understanding, because you'll learn really fast. Like, that's why I like the idea of a higher power anyways, because it makes you and your problems not the center of the universe. Yes. And so now like you can connect. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, like I consider myself Christian, and I'm like, I'm really deep and excited in my faith and stuff like that. But I also understand energy and how it works, and people, and how people work, and the way that I look at God and the principles of, most religions and stuff, and how similar they all are, and how there's just like a little fight about who this guy was, or who, how this guy's story was told by this guy, and like all that stuff. I don't ever try to like push my faith on anybody. I'm a Christian because that's what my foundation was in, and in my tough times through life, that's where I found my stronghold to come back to center. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's where my belief and faith and what I can't see was formed, because it helped me get through things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that some other people have faith in other things. My thing is, I hope in life that you have faith in something, because it's like, I don't know. I feel like if you don't, you're kind of going through life aimlessly, and I feel like that faith is what drives intention and purpose, whether you have faith in kindness and your intention is to just be kind to everyone, like you can go a really long way in life and help a lot of people just with that, with that is just your core belief. So I don't know. I feel like when it comes to the spiritual stuff, I really like it and appreciate it, but more so on an energy level, I feel like it's all translatable, it's all transferable, and it's all something that anybody can learn from every culture. Like I might be Christian, but I love to learn about Buddhism. I love to learn about Islam and all of those things. Like my Islamic friends, my Muslim friends, like I love their culture. I love seeing it. I love feeling it. All of that. That doesn't, like, I get asked a lot as a yoga teacher, like, oh, if I'm Christian, does that mean that I'm praying to some other God and all of these things? I'm like, in the Yoga Sutras, which is like the book of like what yoga is, and it talks about yoga comes from the root word yoke, which means to unite, and it says yoga is to unite you to your higher self. If you're Christian, to unite you to Jesus. If you're Islam, to unite you to Allah. If you're all of that stuff. So it just will bring you closer to your highest spiritual self. And so I really love that about yoga. And my yoga practice, probably as much as any person has brought me closer in my spiritual journey as well to God. I started, like, before I prayed regularly, I spoke to God while I was doing yoga, mainly like, yo, big guy, fucking help me through this.
Need you, yeah.
Yeah, like, push me. I'll push for you. Like, help me though. Like I wear my crosses at the front of my mat when I practice. And, that started initially, I was really going through it in class, and I was like, man, he went through all that for me. The ridicule, the pain, the suffering, the whipping, the crown thorn, just the barbarics. I'm like, man, if that guy could do this for me, I can go through an hour-long yoga class, and I can push when I think I'm tired, and it became a sort of foundation in my faith where I started doing that off the mat too, and not saying I'm anywhere near perfect, what I mean? Like, I'm still a wild guy in some regards, and but I'm working, and I'm working intentionally every day. So
hell yeah.
I think that's what it's about.
Yeah. I mean, I like the process. Like, again, one of the cool things I found in yoga is like the seeking mindset. Like there's seekers versus believers, where like Christianity usually like locks into the word of believer, when really, like, if you think of seeking, like you think of movement, you think of mental growth forward. And I think that's really cool, because like I heard, like, when I was back in started my Bible study, like after I got my trauma, I got jumped, jaw broken, teeth uprooted, all those kind of things. And one of the first like lessons I learned in Bible study was like this old guy just kind of, like, after we left, like grabbed me in the parking lot, and and he like, so there's a gas station across the street, and he like looks over, and then this guy pumping gas. He goes, "Can you tell if that guy's crying right now?" And I'm like, "No." He goes, "Yeah, because you're too far away. Like, you got to be close. You got to seek God. You got to be close to God in order to see if you're making him happy or sad, in essence." So like, I got like the seeking and like the movement forward, like try and get closer, try and understand like what helps and hurts not only God, but myself. Like, if you don't know what helps or hurts you, like you don't know what path you're on. And if the path's important, because if you're a degree off, you can end up miles away from where you want to be. So like, you always have to check in, you always have to pray, you always have to journal, you have to like do this observation to understand like, okay, I got off path this week, or I got off path tonight. Like, how do I get back? And it's just like, and faith or seeking faith or seeking God or whatever you believe in, like, is massively important. And then obviously, like, I love the necklaces at the front of the mat, because like, it's kind of like a theme on my podcast now. Like, people keep, like, I call them relics. Like some people keep relics or reminders around them. Like, Corey G keeps the coal mine mats as like the workout mats, so he remembers where he come from. He has lunch pail. Like Bert Soren, he owns Sorinex, keeps, like, he has a story behind every gun, every knife, every deer head. He can tell you the story and the memory. You know that deal. And like, that's part of their history and their story, or like their purpose. Like, that's why he gets his curiosity came from hunting, and so his seeking came from hunting. And you see like all these ties. So you have, like, again, reminded to sacrifice. I love the crucifixion needles. Like, I have one of those necklaces. And like, so, because that reminds me of sacrifice and pain and how good that was for the world, or how good it can be for yourself, and that kind of thing. And I think sacrifice is a whole nother topic, but just to wrap it up, just because I kind of want to get some, because I got a lot of strength coaches tuning in, that kind of thing. As far as like yoga for like athletes, like, like, obviously, like, I think your stories, I mean, enough in and of itself, like what it did, like how much weight you lost, like you had the abs, you had all this, like you had the movement, and probably like obviously I'm a breather, like big breather, but like breathing and diaphragmatic strength and pelvic floor for like spine stability. But like, if you're introducing a professional athlete to yoga, do you have like, how do you explain why, or do you just show them?
Oh, dude. So I actually teach over at House of Athlete here in Tampa sometimes.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, which is like bad as it gets, you know what I mean?
That's the spot. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, not really kind of, I preach it to them like this, you know. So when we're coming out of high school, you got 2 6'6", 300-pound offensive tackles, right? You got one who's an athlete who can open his hips, who can move and run and bend and stay low, right? And then you have another one who's big and he's strong as hell, but he can't quite bend, can't quite open and run when he's got a pull, you know what I mean? So the big athlete goes to Ohio State, the other one goes to Bowling Green. You know what I'm saying? And same thing with the DB. You know, you got a guy who's fast, but he can't open his hips and run. He can't change direction. So where's he go? Somewhere small where he can learn to do that, you know, where they have time to teach him that. But at Ohio State, you got to be able to do it now. You know what I mean? And so what I teach them is, like, in yoga, you can work at your mobility, which is going to, like, obviously work on your joint mobility, your injury prevention, your tendon elasticity, and all of that kind of stuff. Especially when you're talking sprained ankles, bro. Like, I can roll my ankles to the side and jump up and down on them bad boys, and they will never tear. You know what I mean? Whereas before, you step on somebody's foot wrong, it's gone. You know, like, you're screwed. And so I try to preach to guys like, man, like, this is just going to make you that much more stable. All the stuff that you guys work out, like, there's a whole girdle, a whole set of stuff around it that, like, all that stuff doesn't touch like this, you know? So just being stable in your joints and all that. And then a big thing, especially with guys who catch the ball and stuff like that, creating space in your body and length in your body. You know, it's a game of inches. Every inch counts. So, like, think about being able to reach further. When I'm in a lot of these poses, people are reaching as far as they can reach, and then they're using their breath to expand their body and grow more. So being able to get guys to get every little bit of decompression and expansion in their body to be as long and as athletic as they can is always a cool thing, because you'll know, like, you know how many times guys reach overhead to go grab a football.
Yeah.
But then when you put them in a seated wide leg fold and have them reach over their head sideways, they can barely reach, and you see how tight their side body is. You know what I mean? Because of how rigid all of our training is and all that stuff. But if you can have a guy loose and open, dude, the possibilities are endless. His catch radius goes up, all that kind of stuff. And also just with the breath, like being able to calm yourself in a game. Bro, it's 4th and 2. You're like, you know, you're a left tackle, and they know it, like they're coming. You know, the game's on the line, and you're tired as hell. Being able to take a couple breaths to calm your nervous system can go a really long way to being able to execute.
Yeah, no doubt. And then like even it becomes energy conservation all game long. If like you can get a little more back in between each snap, or definitely between each series, like come the fourth quarter. Yeah, I got more fuel in the tank. I win. Like if you,
it's great.
Yeah, if you can't breathe, you can't fight. So like I should probably take breathing pretty seriously, you know?
Yes, man. Yeah. That's exactly how I approach it.
Yeah, then just to connect this back to Ohio State for you, Eric Lichter had a little post the other day and I love this quote now, or like his logic to it is like, so if you train movement, you don't miss muscles. If you train muscles, you're surely going to miss some movements. And like that makes logical sense in what you're saying on how like, okay, if I can train into this movement pattern and breathe there and control there and have stability, like the muscles will take care of themselves. Like, and that's like the stability side of it. But then like, but if you're just training bench press and push-ups or whatever it ends up being, like you're getting the muscle, but like when it like same as like offense tackle, when are you really bench pressing? Like,
right.
Yeah. Like, no, that's
it's not functional. Yeah.
It's not the movement. You're never going to be locked to a bar in this shoulder pattern. I'm not a big bencher anymore. Really? So yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't bench. I do dumbbells, and usually just dumbbell incline for my push.
Yeah. Hell yeah. But yeah, no, dude, I think that's dope. And we'll wrap it up there, but dude, phenomenal talk, dude. I love talking to you.
Bro, I appreciate it, man. I really thank you for having me on, Brian.
Easy, man. Appreciate your time, man. Be well. This was recorded live from the Bronco if you were just listening, but dude, I'll tell you when this all gets posted. But where can people find you before we get off here?
You find me on Instagram. It's just type Mike Adams, Mike_Adams75.
Cool. Easy. Then where can they find you in 3D for practice?
Oh, in 3D for practice, I'm down here in Tampa, St. Pete, Florida. Down here in the sunshine. So if you Ohio folks are down here on vacation, come see me. But yeah, I post all my stuff on IG from the studios and all that kind of stuff. So find me on there, Facebook, hit me up.
Easy. Perfect, man. All right. Be well, man.
Yep. You too, brother.
See you. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Hope you're getting a lot out of it, a lot of value, or at least some entertainment. But if you are enjoying and getting value out, please don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and review on all audio platforms, and then subscribe on YouTube. All of it would be greatly appreciated. All the support is massive. So thank you and be well.